Welcome to Chatterbox Podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Jessica.
It feels like every time you think things are settling down, getting kind of predictable in the entertainment world, bam! Something totally out of left field just shakes things up.
Oh, tell me about it. It's what keeps things interesting, right?
Right. And I gotta say, this latest news about who's going to be in the new Avengers movie, total shocker.
Yeah, no kidding. The internet's been buzzing nonstop since the announcement.
Absolutely buzzing. And that's exactly what we're diving deep into today, the cast of Avengers. Doomsday. Seriously, the sheer number of names they've thrown out there is mind-blowing.
It's a lot to unpack, that's for sure.
It is. And luckily, you've pointed me to a couple of articles that really lay it all out. We've got The Hollywood Reporter with their piece, Marvel Unveils Avengers. Doomsday cast with MCU mainstays and X-Men, fantastic 4 stars. And then Variety's deep dive, every X-Men actor in the Avengers. Doomsday cast. Channing Tatum, Patrick Stewart, James Marsden, Ian McKellen, and more.
2 great sources that really get into the nitty-gritty of this massive cast announcement.
Yeah, exactly. And our mission today is to break it all down for you, our listeners. We're going to sift through these articles, pick out the juiciest bits, and try to figure out what it all means for, well, the future of the entire MCU. It's like we're doing the heavy lifting, so you don't have to.
Consider us your personal Marvel news analysts.
Exactly. So strap yourselves in, folks, because this is not your average superhero team-up. What's crazy is just how huge this thing is. They're pulling actors from every corner of the Marvel Universe. The core MCU, the X-Men world Fox created, even the stars of the Fantastic Four movie that hasn't even come out yet. It's insane.
It really does feel like a culmination of, decades of Marvel movies. They're bringing it all together.
They really are.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin with something this massive?
Well, I think a good place to start is with the big picture. Avengers. Doomsday is being presented as this colossal event, this landmark moment in the MCU timeline. Think about it. It's coming a full 6 years after Avengers. Endgame, which, let's face it, was a pretty big deal.
Right. Endgame was like the end of an era. So to have this new Avengers movie coming so long after, it has to be huge to even justify its existence.
Exactly. And to add to that, the way they announced the cast was a spectacle in itself. They had this live stream event that went on for almost 5.5 hours. Talk about building anticipation.
5.5 hours. I
Yeah.
mean, they really milked that reveal for all it was worth.
They did. And throughout those 5.5 hours, we saw the return of some of the biggest names in the MCU. Chris Hemsworth as Thor, obviously. Tom Hiddleston back as Loki. Anthony Mackie continuing his run as Captain America. Paul Rudd bringing the charm as Ant-Man. Letitia Wright stepping into the role of Black Panther. Simu Liu as Shang-Chi. Danny Ramirez back as the Falcon. And Winston Duke as M'Baku. Talk about a powerhouse lineup.
It's like the Avengers Greatest Hits tour. But, some people noticed a couple of big names were missing. No Tom Holland, which means no Spider-Man. And Chris Evans as Captain America wasn't there either, though the articles hint he might show up in one of 2 parts of this Avengers saga. What do you think about those absences and those possible returns?
Yeah, the Spider-Man thing is interesting. Could be a contract issue, could be they're saving him for a surprise reveal, or maybe it's a deliberate story choice to up the stakes. As for Chris Evans, well, his potential return after that seemingly final farewell in Endgame opens up a whole can of worms. We're talking time travel, multiverse shenanigans, maybe even a different version of Steve Rogers. Who knows?
It's like they're playing with our emotions. But honestly, those kinds of mysteries can sometimes generate even more excitement than a straightforward confirmation.
Absolutely. It gets everyone theorizing and speculating. It's all part of the fun.
And speaking of fun, it looks like we're getting a healthy dose of the Thunderbolts in Avengers. Doomsday, too.
Oh, yeah. Big time. It seems a lot of the Thunderbolts cast is going to be showing up. Sebastian Stan as the Winter Soldier, Florence Pugh reprising her role as Yelena Belova, Wyatt Russell as U.S. Agent, David Harbour back as Red Guardian, Hannah John Kamen as Ghost, and even Louis Pullman, who's playing this mysterious character currently only known as Bob. It really feels like they're setting up the Thunderbolts movie to be a major stepping stone to this Avengers event.
It makes sense, right? It shows that these different movies aren't just standalone stories. They're all connected, all building towards something bigger.
Precisely. It's all part of a larger tapestry.
Now, this is where things get really wild, especially for fans who've been following these movies for a while. We're finally getting actors from the Fox X-Men movies crossing over into the MCU. For years, this felt like a fantasy, something we'd only ever dream about.
It's huge. I mean, for the longest time, these were two separate, completely distinct Marvel universes. And now to see actors like Patrick Stewart, the OG Professor X from the original X-Men movie back in 2000, alongside Ian McKellen, who was just brilliant as Magneto in that same film, it's a bit surreal, isn't it?
Totally surreal. It's like two legendary teens coming together for the first time.
Exactly.
And it's not just them. James Marsden is coming back as Cyclops. Rebecca Romijn is back as Mystique, both of whom were also in that first X-Men movie. And get this, the Hollywood Reporter pointed out that Kevin Feige, the big boss at Marvel Studios, he actually got his start as an assistant on that very same film.
Wow, that's a fun fact. Talk about coming full circle.
Right. It's like this is a personal victory for him as much as it is for the fans. But we're not done with the X-Men crew yet. Alan Cumming, who just stole every scene as Nightcrawler in X2, he's back too. And Kelsey Grammer's reprising his role as Beast, who we last saw properly in X-Men The Last Stand, though he did have that quick cameo in the Marvels recently.
Yeah, and let's not forget his brief appearance in X-Men, Days of Future Past, too. It's like they're pulling out all the stops with these X-Men characters.
They really are. And here's where things get even more interesting. Now, the Variety article makes this really cool point. With the whole multiverse thing being established as, infinite parallel realities and all that, there's a good chance these actors could be playing slightly different versions of these characters, maybe even completely new characters altogether.
It's a brilliant way to have their cake and eat it, too, right?
Yeah.
You get the nostalgia of seeing these familiar faces, but you also leave room for some creative freedom to make them fit into the current MCU.
It's like they're giving themselves a blank slate while still tapping into that fan love. And speaking of fan love, we can't forget about Channing Tatum finally getting his shot at Gambit. I mean, this has been a long time coming.
It's been a real saga, hasn't it? Like years of him trying to get a solo Gambit movie off the ground at Fox and then it getting canceled after Disney bought them. I can't even imagine how frustrating that must have been.
He actually told Variety back in 2022 that the whole thing left him feeling traumatized. He even said he had to shut off his Marvel machine to cope with it. You can really tell how much this project meant to him.
It must have been heartbreaking. All those years of hoping and planning and then poof, it's gone.
Gone. But luckily, that wasn't the end of the story. He finally got to debut as Gambit in Deadpool and Wolverine last year, and by all accounts, the fans loved it.
Oh yeah, he killed it. Everyone was so happy to see him finally embody the character.
He even posted this really sweet message on social media afterwards, thanking Ryan Reynolds for sticking by him and fighting for the role. He said he'd owe him probably forever.
That's awesome. It's a testament to his dedication and Ryan Reynolds' loyalty, too. And the best part is, it seems he's not done with Gambit. He told Variety he's still holding out hope for a solo movie someday.
So fingers crossed for that. But for now, it's awesome to see him finally part of the bigger MCU picture.
Agreed. Now, shifting gears a bit, we also learned that the main cast of the upcoming Fantastic Four movie, Fantastic Four, First Steps, is going to be in Avengers. Doomsday, too.
Yeah, that's another big one. It really shows how they're weaving all these different threads together, even with characters who haven't even had their own movie yet.
Exactly. We're going to see Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic, Vanessa Kirby as the Invisible Woman, Ebon Moss-Bachrach as the Thing, and Joseph Quinn as the Human Torch. All thrown into the mix before they even get their proper introduction. It's a bold move.
It's like they're saying, hey, get ready, these guys are going to be important.
Yeah, exactly. Pay attention, folks. These are your new Fantastic Four.
Now, just when you thought they couldn't throw any more curveballs, the Hollywood Reporter mentioned Tenoch Mejia coming back as Namor. The underwater king we met in Black Panther. Wakanda forever.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise, especially after all the stuff that went down last year with those allegations against him.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about whether he'd even be in the MCU anymore. But he did show up at the Echo premiere, so I guess that was a hint that he was still in the good graces of the studio.
Right, and now this pretty much confirms it. It'll be interesting to see how his character fits into this huge story. He's got a complicated history and some serious power, so I'm sure he'll shake things up.
Get this, both articles say that there are even more cast members they haven't revealed yet. So this is just the tip of the iceberg, folks.
They know how to keep us guessing, that's for sure. It's like they're dropping breadcrumbs and letting the fans connect the dots.
Masterful marketing, if you ask me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how they actually announced all this 5.5-hour live stream thing. What was it like?
Well, from what I gather, it was pretty simple, but in a good way. They just focused on the impact of the names themselves.
No fancy graphics or anything.
Nope, just director's chairs, each with an actor's name on the back. Every 12 minutes or so, they'd play some music from that actor's previous Marvel movies, build up the suspense a bit, and then the camera would move to the next chair, like a slow burn reveal.
I kind of love that. It lets the names speak for themselves.
Absolutely. And then, to wrap it all up, they played the classic Avengers theme music, and bam, they reveal Robert Downey Jr.
No way. I bet the internet exploded.
Oh, it did. And here's the kicker. He wasn't announced as Iron Man.
Wait, what? No Iron Man, but he...
Yeah, I know, we all thought he was done. But according to these articles, he's coming back as Dr. Doom.
No way. Dr. Doom. That's actually genius.
Right. It's like the ultimate casting twist.
And I remember when they hinted at his return at Comic-Con last year, the crowd went nuts. I mean, he's Robert Downey Jr., he's Iron Man, he's the foundation of the whole MCU.
And The Hollywood Reporter talked about how he's reuniting with the Russo brothers, too, who directed Infinity War and Endgame.
Oh, man, that's a dream team right there.
It really is. And apparently, Kevin Feige personally pitched Downey on the idea of coming back as Dr. Doom. And then Downey actually helped convince the Russos to return, too, after they'd been working on other projects.
So it sounds like it took some serious behind-the-scenes work to make this all happen.
Definitely. It's like they had to assemble their own super team just to make this movie.
Okay, so for everyone listening who's already marking their calendars, Avengers. Doomsday is coming out May 1st, 2026. And the sequel, Avengers Secret Wars, is set for May 7th, 2027. So yeah, we've got some time to wait, but I have a feeling it's going to be worth it.
I think so, too. And, in one of the articles, the Russo brothers talked about how they managed to keep track of all these actors. They use these baseball cards, except now they're magnets, apparently, with each actor's face on them.
Baseball cards, that's hilarious.
I know, right? They said it was the only way they could keep everyone straight, especially after juggling so many characters in Infinity War and Endgame.
It really gives you an idea of just how massive these movies are.
Oh yeah, they're huge undertakings. And the Russos also said that they went through this long creative process to figure out exactly which characters they wanted to use and how they'd fit into the story.
So this wasn't just some random casting free-for-all. They had a plan.
They always do.
Okay, so before we wrap up, let's break down the key takeaways from this whole Avengers Doomsday cast announcement. What are the big things our listeners should be excited about?
I think the biggest thing is the sheer scale of it all. It's unlike anything we've ever seen in a superhero movie before. We've got returning favorites, we've got iconic X-Men characters finally joining the party, we've got the new Fantastic Four making their debut, and we've got unexpected characters like Namor coming back into the fold.
And let's not forget the bombshell Robert Downey Jr. returning, not as Iron Man, but as Dr. Doom. That alone is a game changer.
It's a brilliant move, and it really speaks to the ambition of this project. They're not just rehashing old ideas, they're pushing the boundaries of what a superhero movie can be.
So here's a final thought for everyone listening. What does it mean to bring together all these different characters, all these different universes, into one gigantic story? What kind of threat could possibly justify this level of superhero and maybe supervillain teamwork? And what classic storylines might we see revisited or maybe even completely rewritten with this incredible cast?
It's a whole new era for the MCU.
It really is. And we'll be here every step of the way to break it all down for you. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
See you next time.